Ethan had never felt so small in his life. The corridors of Vytheria's space embassy stretched endlessly before him, lit by soft, green luminescent panels that hummed quietly, almost like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Every step he took echoed faintly, a reminder that he was a human far from home, trying to fit into a world that saw him as fragile, emotional, and unpredictable. He had thought that dating Lyra, a brilliant Vytherian researcher, would help him feel at home here, but now everything felt like it was slipping through his fingers. She had just ended things, leaving him stunned and heartbroken in the middle of the alien city. Lyra had been gentle, careful with her words, but the message was clear. Humans were not considered stable partners in Vytherian society. They admired humans' boldness and curiosity, yes, but in matters of personal commitment they were seen as chaotic, driven by emotions too raw for a species that lived centuries and measured decisions with patience. Ethan had tried to argue, tried to explain that love didn't care about species or lifespan, but Lyra's eyes were firm, resolute. She had said, "It's not about you, Ethan. It's about what this world expects of me, what I must do to survive here." He had walked away, the sound of his boots muffled by the soft carpeting of the embassy, trying to push away the sting of rejection. Humans were supposed to be resilient, adaptable, capable of surviving in environments that others could not. That was what made them remarkable. But at that moment, Ethan felt none of that strength. He felt lost. He was about to leave the embassy and perhaps even the planet when a soft hand rested on his shoulder. "Ethan," a voice whispered. It was calm, deliberate, and it carried weight. He turned and froze. Lady Celira, Lyra's mother, stood there. Her presence was commanding, yet warm. Her eyes held centuries of experience, and her posture radiated dignity. She was considered a matriarch among the Vytherians, respected not only for her wisdom but also for her political insight. To Ethan, she looked almost fragile, but there was a spark in her eyes that hinted at power and influence beyond anything he had ever encountered. "Marry me instead," she said quietly, leaning close so only he could hear. For a moment, Ethan's mind went blank. He blinked, trying to process what he had just heard. Was this some kind of joke? Was she testing him? His chest tightened, and his thoughts raced. Lady Celira was not young by human standards. She was old, wise, and powerful. Marrying her would be unthinkable, absurd even. Yet the tone of her voice was calm, not teasing. It was serious, measured, and carried a sense of expectation that humans rarely experienced. I don't understand," Ethan stammered. She smiled faintly, a hint of amusement in her eyes, but it was not condescending. "Do not misunderstand me," she said. "I am not offering marriage because of desire. I am offering it because you might be capable of more than anyone suspects." Ethan swallowed hard. He had been trained as a diplomat, educated in human ways of negotiation and strategy, but nothing in his preparation had prepared him for this. The Vytherians measured worth differently. They valued logic, patience, and strategic thinking that spanned decades. Humans were impulsive, emotional, and sometimes reckless. Yet here in front of him, a Vytherian of immense power was suggesting he might hold value in a world that had dismissed him. "I don't know if I'm... What you want?" he said slowly, unsure how to respond. "You do not need to know," she replied. "Actions will tell us more than words ever could. Come with me. I will show you something." Ethan hesitated, but curiosity, something humans had in abundance, pushed him forward. They moved together through the embassy, passing guards who barely blinked at their presence. Lady Celira led him to an elevator, its interior glowing with soft lights that responded to her thoughts, and they ascended to the top of the tallest tower. When the doors opened, Ethan found himself on a balcony overlooking Vytheria's capital. The city stretched endlessly, with crystal towers, floating gardens, and rivers of light that moved like liquid starlight. It was breathtaking, but it also felt intimidating. He was reminded again of how far from Earth he was, how alien this world was, and how out of place a human like him might seem. "Look," she said, gesturing at the city. "This is where our world tests those who enter it. Most fail. Humans fail because they refuse to understand the rules. But perhaps in your case, you will find a way to succeed by not following them at all." Ethan's heart raced. He wanted to argue, to say he was just a human, that he couldn't possibly measure up. But something in her voice left no room for excuses. It was not an order. It was a challenge. "I don't know if I can," he admitted. "Do not think of it as a question of ability," she said. "Think of it as a question of will. Can you adapt, think, and act in ways no one expects?" For the first time that day, Ethan felt a spark of purpose. He was a human. Humans were adaptable. Humans were clever. Humans survived in environments that others thought impossible. Perhaps this was his chance to prove it. Over the next few days, Lady Salira put him through a series of subtle tests. He was introduced to Vathirian social gatherings, where conversation was more a game of wit and subtlety than a simple exchange of words. He observed, listened, and learned quickly. When other diplomats debated policies, he proposed solutions that were unorthodox but effective. When Vathirian discussed resource management, he suggested ideas inspired by human approaches to scarcity and abundance. Some of the aliens were skeptical. Others were curious. Slowly, Ethan began to notice something remarkable. Humans brought a perspective that Vathirians did not anticipate. They valued creativity, ethics, and improvisation in ways that were foreign to the centuries-old species, and humans were unpredictable, in a way that could either disrupt or save entire systems. Lady Salira watched quietly, never intervening, only noting Ethan's choices and actions. She allowed him to make mistakes, knowing that a true test required freedom. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the city, she spoke again. "Most humans fail because they underestimate themselves," she said softly. "They believe the galaxy's rules are too vast, that their lives are too short, that their influence is limited. But influence is not about size or time. It is about insight, courage, and understanding. I see those qualities in you." Ethan felt a mix of pride and fear. Could he truly live up to her expectations? Could he navigate this alien world and prove that humans were more than what the galaxy believed? The answer came sooner than he expected. A trade dispute arose between two neighboring systems. Each claimed rights to rare minerals found on a contested moon. The Vathirians were locked in debate, unsure how to proceed, and tensions rose quietly but palpably. Ethan, drawing on human logic and his recent lessons in Vathirian diplomacy, proposed a solution: a joint resource-sharing program that would give both systems access in measured amounts, ensuring fairness while respecting local customs. The Vathirian Council was stunned. Humans had never been part of these negotiations before, and no one had expected such a straightforward, practical solution from a species they considered impulsive. Ethan explained his reasoning calmly, clearly, and with a touch of human humility that disarmed even the most skeptical elders. By the end of the meeting, the council had unanimously accepted the plan. Lady Salira smiled faintly from the back of the chamber. "See?" she whispered. "This is why I suggested marriage. Not in the way you thought, but as a test. You have the mind and the courage that our world underestimates." Ethan realized then that his heartbreak over Lyra was only a beginning. He had been underestimated, dismissed, and doubted, yet here he was, standing in a place that had seemed impossible for a human to navigate. And he had succeeded. His species, long considered secondary in the galaxy, was proving its worth through him. He looked out over the city, the soft glow of crystal towers reflecting in his eyes, and felt a surge of determination. Humans were not just survivors, they were innovators, problem solvers, and pioneers. And if he could continue to show the galaxy what humans were capable of, perhaps no one would ever underestimate them again. Ethan did not know what the future held, nor did he know the full reason behind Lady Salira's cryptic invitation. But he did know one thing: he would not fail. Humans had adapted to deserts, oceans, mountains, and cities on countless planets across centuries. They had endured wars, plagues, and challenges that had humbled entire species. If anyone could find a way to succeed in this alien world, it was him. And by extension, every human who came after him. As he stood on the balcony, the wind of Vytheria brushing against his face, Ethan felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Not the fragile kind that crumbles at the first obstacle, but the strong, relentless kind that humans carried in their hearts. He would adapt. He would learn. And he would show the universe that humans were not to be overlooked. And somewhere, far away from this balcony, Lady Salira watched him with quiet approval, knowing that this human, broken, uncertain, and underestimated was beginning a journey that could change the galaxy forever. Ethan had expected the days following his initial test to be calm, even boring. He had survived Lady Salira's challenge, earned her quiet approval, and believed that perhaps the hardest part was behind him. He had been wrong. Vytheria was a planet of subtlety, where every conversation was layered and every gesture carried meaning. Humans often misunderstood the nuances of the society, assuming that patience or caution were weaknesses, but Ethan quickly realized they were a language of their own. Lady Salira had begun guiding him through these subtleties. She did not teach him with books or lectures. Instead, she led him through the city, through council meetings, and through gatherings of Vytherian elders, letting him observe, listen, and infer. One morning she brought him to the Crystal Plaza, the largest open space in Vytheria's capital. The plaza was a marvel, with floors of polished crystal that reflected the sky in shifting colors, and fountains that flowed upward as if defying gravity. Lady Salira stood beside him, gesturing for him to watch. "Today, you will observe human adaptation in action," she said softly. "Not all lessons can be learned from reading or watching. Some must be understood through presence." Ethan nodded. He felt nervous. Observation was one thing, but being a part of a society that had evolved for centuries beyond human lifespans was another. As he scanned the plaza, he saw Vytherians gathering in clusters, discussing commerce, technology, and politics. Their conversations were intricate dances of logic and diplomacy. A simple misstep could result in social embarrassment or political disadvantage. Humans were not trained to operate in such a web of subtlety. Then, something unexpected happened. A group of alien merchants from the nearby star system of Zalara arrived, arguing over trading rights for rare Vytherian crystals. Their voices rose, but not in anger. Vytherian anger was quiet and controlled, often masked beneath layers of politeness. Yet the tension was clear. The two groups were at a deadlock, and the council that oversaw trade was nowhere in sight. Ethan stepped forward instinctively, recalling the lessons Lady Salira had hinted at. He approached the merchants cautiously, introducing himself and acknowledging their concerns. At first, they were skeptical. Why would a human, an outsider, intervene in a dispute that had been going on for weeks? But Ethan had learned the Vytherian art of listening before acting. He did not rush to propose solutions. Instead, he asked questions, clarified misunderstandings, and encouraged both parties to articulate their priorities. Slowly, the air in the plaza began to shift. The merchants started to see him not as an intruder, but as a neutral mediator. Humans had a natural curiosity and empathy that Vytherians found difficult to quantify. Ethan suggested a plan, a shared trading schedule that rotated access to the crystals, and a joint investment in refining technology to double the yield without overharvesting. It was a solution that neither side had considered, constrained as they were by centuries of precedent. The Vytherians around him watched silently. Lady Salira's expression remained unreadable, but Ethan could feel her approval like a quiet current. By the end of the day, the dispute was resolved peacefully, and the merchants departed, grateful and surprised. "You handled that well," Lady Salira said as they walked back to the palace. "Humans are unpredictable, yes, but unpredictability can be strength, when applied with wisdom. Most would have panicked or deferred to authority. You acted. That is why I brought you here." Ethan smiled faintly. He was beginning to understand. His human traits, impatience, adaptability, empathy, were often seen as flaws, but in the right circumstances, they became assets. He had always thought of himself as ordinary, but on Vytheria, ordinary human skills were extraordinary. Over the next few weeks, Ethan's role expanded. Lady Salira began inviting him to private council meetings, where he was introduced not as a diplomat from Earth, but as a representative of humanity. The Vytherians were cautious. They had long dismissed humans as unpredictable, and some were still skeptical. But every time Ethan spoke, he demonstrated insight and creativity that others could not match. One evening, Lady Salira took him to her personal observatory, a dome of glass that overlooked the city and beyond. The stars stretched infinitely, each one a reminder of the galaxy's vastness. Ethan felt a familiar thrill. Humans were explorers by nature, always curious, always seeking. "Do you see the pattern, Ethan?" Lady Salira asked. "The galaxy is not as orderly as it seems. Systems, species, and societies are interconnected in ways that are both fragile and complex. Most humans would be overwhelmed, but your mind sees opportunity in what others see as chaos." Ethan nodded, unsure of what to say. He was not used to being praised so directly, especially by someone as influential as Lady Salira. Yet her words were true. Humans thrived in chaos. They adapted. They found solutions where others saw only obstacles. Just as he was beginning to feel comfortable, a new challenge arose. A Vytherian scientific consortium requested human input on a project that had baffled the brightest minds on the planet. The consortium was studying a newly discovered energy field that defied conventional physics. Many Vytherians considered it dangerous and unpredictable, preferring to observe from a distance. Humans, with their history of experimentation and risk-taking, were thought unsuitable for such work. Ethan was invited to participate, and he accepted with cautious excitement. Over the following days, he studied the energy field alongside the Vytherian scientists. He asked questions that no one had considered, combining human logic with the insights he had gained from observing Vytherian thought. He suggested adjustments to their approach, tested hypotheses, and carefully documented results. Within a short time, he made progress that had eluded the consortium for months. The Vytherians were astonished. They had underestimated him, assuming his human perspective would be too simplistic. Instead, his ideas opened new possibilities, showing that a species with shorter lifespans and faster adaptability could see patterns that those who measured time in centuries often overlooked. Lady Salira watched silently, her satisfaction subtle but unmistakable. She had known humans could achieve great things, but it was one thing to anticipate potential and another to witness it realized. Ethan was doing more than just proving himself. He was changing perceptions of humanity across the planet. Meanwhile, news of his success began to spread beyond Vytheria. Humans on neighboring colonies watched with pride and hope. For centuries, they had been seen as reckless and immature. But Ethan's achievements demonstrated that human qualities, creativity, courage, and empathy were invaluable. His story became an inspiration, not just for humans, but for anyone who had been underestimated. Amid the challenges, Ethan's relationship with Lady Salira evolved. Their interactions remained professional, but a bond of trust and mutual respect grew. She guided him, challenging his assumptions while allowing him to make mistakes. She never told him exactly what the ultimate test was, but he sensed it would come. Humans had a way of exceeding expectations, and he felt that moment approaching. One afternoon, Lady Salira summoned him to a private chamber filled with holographic displays of Vitheria's planetary systems and trade routes. She gestured to a complex diagram. "This," she said, "is the web of our influence across the stars. Each line represents an alliance, a trade agreement, a delicate balance of trust. Humans rarely survive here because they act too quickly, too boldly. But you may change that." Ethan studied the holograms carefully. He realized that the challenges ahead would not only test his mind, but also his humanity. His creativity, adaptability, and empathy would be tools to navigate the complex politics and social structures of a species far older than his own. He felt a surge of determination. Humans had survived deserts, oceans, and unknown worlds. They had overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. Surely he could navigate this alien society as well. As days turned into weeks, Ethan continued to grow. He mediated disputes, suggested innovative policies, and participated in scientific exploration. Each success reinforced a simple truth. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that underestimation was an opportunity. Where others saw limitations, he saw possibilities. Where others hesitated, he acted. Vitherians began to notice. Council members whispered about the human who was quietly reshaping perceptions. Some were intrigued, others wary, but all were compelled to recognize that humans had potential far beyond what they had imagined. Lady Salira observed each reaction, satisfied that Ethan's growth was not just personal, but symbolic. One evening, as the twin moons of Vitheria rose in the sky, Ethan walked across the palace gardens. The crystalline flowers glowed softly, casting light across the pathways. He thought about Lyra, about the heartbreak that had brought him here, and about Lady Salira's cryptic invitation. He realized that the journey was not about love, at least not yet. It was about proving the worth of a species, about showing that humans could thrive in a galaxy that had long overlooked them. Ethan smiled. Humans were not the strongest, nor the oldest, nor the fastest, but they were adaptable, clever, and relentless. And if he could demonstrate that even in a single alien society, perhaps the rest of the galaxy would begin to see humans differently. Lady Salira appeared beside him, her presence calm and commanding. She said nothing, simply walking beside him, letting him reflect on the progress he had made. Ethan felt a sense of partnership, of mentorship, and of purpose. Humans had been underestimated for too long, and now, on this distant world, he was beginning to change that narrative. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges that could test his ingenuity and resilience. But for the first time since Lyra's rejection, Ethan felt confident. Humans had always survived, always adapted, and always found a way to succeed, and on Vitheria, he would continue to prove it. Ethan looked up at the stars, feeling a quiet thrill of possibility. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that was their advantage. While others relied on tradition and experience measured in centuries, humans had creativity, courage, and the ability to see solutions where none seemed to exist. And as Lady Salira watched him quietly, she knew that this human, ordinary by Earth's standards but extraordinary in potential, was only beginning a journey that would redefine how the galaxy viewed humanity. Ethan's life on Vitheria had changed in ways he could not have imagined. He was no longer just a visitor or a human observer. He had become a participant in the subtle dance of politics, science, and society that defined the planet. The council, once skeptical of him, now watched closely, whispering about his insights and contributions. Even those who had doubted humans began to acknowledge that there was something remarkable in Ethan's mind and approach. One morning, Lady Salira summoned him to the council chamber. The room was vast, with high ceilings that shimmered with a faint silver light, and walls that displayed the histories of Vitherian civilization. It was a place where centuries of tradition weighed heavily, yet here he was, a human, invited not as an outsider, but as a contributor. Today, Lady Salira said softly. "You will see how far your influence can reach." Ethan nodded, a mixture of excitement and apprehension tightening in his chest. He had already mediated trade disputes, offered innovative solutions for scientific research, and even suggested ways to improve interstellar communication. But he had a sense that this meeting would challenge him in ways he had not yet experienced. The council chamber filled with representatives from Vytheria and its neighboring systems. Ambassadors from Zalara, Torvian, and Cathara had arrived, each carrying their own agendas, priorities, and secrets. Ethan had studied their histories, customs, and motivations, but the true test would be navigating their interactions in real time. The discussion began calmly, focusing on resource distribution and technological sharing. Each representative spoke with precision, weighing every word. The human mind was foreign to them. They expected cautious, calculated responses, but humans often acted on instinct, creativity, and empathy. Ethan's turn came, and he spoke clearly, offering solutions that combined logic with human intuition. He suggested creating joint research teams across the systems to study rare energy fields, combining resources in a way that balanced risk and innovation. He recommended new protocols for communication that would allow quick problem-solving while respecting each system's customs. His ideas were bold yet practical, and they surprised the council. The Zalara representative leaned forward. "Your perspective is unusual," she said, her tone cautious. "Most humans are impulsive and short-sighted. How can we trust that these plans will succeed?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why it works," he said. "Sometimes a fresh perspective reveals possibilities that tradition misses. Humans may be short-lived, but we notice things others overlook. We adapt quickly. We learn from mistakes and act with empathy and creativity. If that is seen as impulsive, then I accept it. But our solutions work because they combine observation with action." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some representatives exchanged skeptical glances, but others leaned in, intrigued. Lady Salira's eyes shone with quiet pride. She had chosen wisely. As the meeting continued, Ethan found himself challenged repeatedly. Questions came fast, some designed to confuse or trap him. Others intended to test his understanding of alien politics and history. Responded carefully, listening first, thinking second, and speaking third. Each answer drew on his human traits: intuition, adaptability, and a willingness to question assumptions. By the end of the session, representatives who had doubted him were nodding, acknowledging the value of his approach. After the council meeting, Ethan walked with Lady Salira through the palace gardens. The crystalline flora glowed softly, reflecting the colors of the twin moons above. He was exhausted but exhilarated. "You are beginning to understand why humans matter," Lady Salira said. "Your species is underestimated because others focus on what you lack, not what you can offer. You are clever, adaptable, and resilient. These qualities are rare across the galaxy, and they are valuable. Never forget that." Ethan nodded. "It's strange. I've always thought of humans as ordinary, but here it seems that ordinary is extraordinary." "Extraordinary often hides in plain sight," she replied. "The galaxy does not recognize it until someone demonstrates it. And that someone can be you, Ethan." The following weeks were a whirlwind. Ethan's influence continued to grow as he applied human creativity to problems that had long puzzled Vytherian leaders. He redesigned trade schedules to prevent resource shortages, suggested diplomatic protocols that eased tensions between distant systems, and even contributed ideas to scientific projects that had stymied the brightest minds for years. Each success reinforced the notion that humans were not only capable, but essential. One day, news arrived of a potential crisis on a distant colony. A newly discovered planet, rich in resources, had been claimed by multiple species. Tensions were rising, and war, though unlikely, loomed as a distant possibility. Lady Salira asked Ethan to advise on the situation. He studied the data, analyzed the political histories of the claimants, and proposed a solution: a shared governance model where humans and alien species would jointly manage the planet's resources, with oversight committees to resolve disputes. His plan emphasized fairness, transparency, and adaptability, principles that were simple for humans but revolutionary to alien diplomats accustomed to rigid hierarchies. The council debated his proposal for hours. Some representatives were wary, fearing that a human's plan might fail. Others were intrigued, recognizing that his approach solved problems they had been unable to address for decades. In the end, the plan was accepted, and the colony's future was secured without conflict. Ethan's reputation soared. Humans, he realized, were no longer seen as outsiders. They were innovators, problem solvers, and trusted advisors. He felt a deep pride, not for personal glory, but for what it meant for his species. Humanity, long underestimated, was beginning to be respected across the galaxy. Yet, challenges remained. While many appreciated his insights, some Vitharians still doubted humans' ability to handle complex situations. Ethan understood that proving his worth once was not enough. He needed to demonstrate consistency, patience, and resilience. Lady Salira continued to guide him, but she allowed him to make decisions independently. She would observe quietly, offering subtle advice only when necessary. It was her way of preparing him for the larger challenges ahead, ensuring that he would not rely solely on her influence, but develop his own authority. One evening, as they walked along the floating gardens, Ethan asked a question that had been on his mind. "Why me?" he said. "Why not someone else? There are countless humans, and there are countless species here. Why choose me to represent my species?" Lady Salira paused, looking at the glowing flowers. "Because you possess qualities that cannot be taught: courage, curiosity, empathy, and the ability to act decisively when others hesitate. You think in ways that the galaxy is not used to. You see possibilities where others see obstacles. That is why you were chosen." Ethan absorbed her words, feeling a mixture of pride and responsibility. He understood that this was bigger than himself. Humans had always survived, adapted, and thrived in environments that others deemed impossible. Now, on Vitheria, he had the chance to show the galaxy that humans could lead, inspire, and innovate in ways that others could not. Days later, a delegation from Cathara arrived to discuss a new alliance. The negotiations were complex, involving trade rights, shared technology, and interstellar communication protocols. Ethan was invited to participate, not as a representative of Earth, but as a voice of humanity. During the negotiations, he noticed a recurring problem. The aliens were so focused on precedent and protocol that they overlooked practical solutions. Drawing on human ingenuity, Ethan suggested compromises and creative approaches that balanced tradition with innovation. His ideas were initially met with skepticism, but as discussions progressed, the delegates began to see the logic and fairness in his proposals. By the end of the day, the alliance was strengthened, and the Cathara delegation left with renewed confidence in the Vitharian leadership. Ethan's role in the success was quietly acknowledged, though he remained humble. He understood that true influence came not from recognition, but from the results of one's actions. As he walked back to the palace, Ethan reflected on how far he had come, from heartbreak and uncertainty to respect and influence. His journey had been extraordinary. He realized that humans' greatest strength was not raw power or longevity, but their ability to adapt, empathize, and think creatively. These traits, long undervalued by other species, were now reshaping perceptions across the galaxy. Lady Salira met him at the palace gates, her eyes reflecting quiet approval. "You are beginning to understand, Ethan," she said. "Humans have always been underestimated, and that has been your advantage. You see solutions where others see problems. You act when others hesitate. And in doing so, you are changing the galaxy's view of your species. Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. He was no longer just a visitor on Vytheria. He was a representative of humanity, demonstrating that his species could navigate complex societies, solve intricate problems, and inspire trust and respect. As he gazed at the stars above, he thought of the challenges that still lay ahead. There would be more disputes, more crises, and more tests of human ingenuity. But he was ready. Humans had always found ways to survive and thrive, even in environments that others considered impossible. And now, on Vytheria, they had the chance to prove that their potential extended across the stars. Ethan felt a surge of determination. He would continue to learn, adapt, and demonstrate humanity's strengths. He would show that humans were not only capable, but indispensable. And as Lady Celira watched him from the shadows, she knew that this human, bold, intelligent, and persistent, was beginning a journey that would leave a lasting mark on the galaxy. He smiled to himself. Humans had always been underestimated. That was their advantage. And with every decision he made, every challenge he overcame, he was proving that humans were not only resilient, but extraordinary. The stars above twinkled like distant witnesses to his progress, and Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. Humans had a place in the galaxy, and he would ensure that they earned it, not through force, but through ingenuity, courage, and unwavering determination. Ethan had reached a point where he felt the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders, but not in a way that crushed him. It was a weight of possibility, of potential, of proof that humans could not only survive in alien societies, but thrive and lead. The Vytherians, once skeptical of his species, were beginning to notice that humans brought something unique, a combination of intuition, empathy, and practical brilliance that defied their expectations. It started with small things. Council members began inviting him to strategy meetings earlier than expected, asking for his input on trade agreements, scientific projects, and diplomatic missions. Each time he spoke, he noticed the subtle shift in their expressions. The Vytherians were trained to be polite, careful, and measured. But when Ethan presented solutions that worked, their subtle nods and quiet murmurs of approval betrayed admiration. One morning, Lady Celira approached him in the palace gardens. The light from the twin moons reflected off the crystalline plants, giving the space a serene glow. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but commanding, "the time has come for your ideas to reach beyond Vytheria. The galaxy is beginning to notice your efforts, but perception alone is not enough. You must lead by example."
"Are you ready?"
Ethan nodded. He had been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. All the lessons, challenges, and small victories had built him toward something greater. "I'm ready," he said. Lady Celira smiled faintly. "Good. Then you will start by representing humanity in the Interstellar Council. They have invited your input on trade, diplomacy, and exploration policies. Many species will not take you seriously at first. That is expected. They have always underestimated humans. The Interstellar Council was a massive assembly, a place where representatives from dozens of star systems gathered to debate policies, trade routes, and scientific exploration. Ethan felt a thrill of anticipation and anxiety. Humans had never been formally involved at this level. The room was filled with beings of every imaginable form, each with centuries of experience, and many of them were initially dismissive of him, simply because he was human. When he was called to speak, he stood tall, took a deep breath, and began. "I am Ethan, representing humanity. I am here to offer our perspective, our ideas, and our willingness to collaborate. Humans may be a young species compared to many others here, but we bring qualities that have allowed us to survive, adapt, and innovate. I hope to show that these qualities are valuable, not just for humans, but for the galaxy as a whole." At first, there were murmurs. Some delegates exchanged skeptical looks. They had dealt with humans before, and the stories they had heard described impulsiveness and recklessness. But as Ethan spoke, calmly and clearly, outlining solutions to complex problems and proposing collaborations that respected each system's needs. The murmurs faded. Delegates leaned forward. Questions were asked, and Ethan answered with insight and practicality. His human approach, creative, empathetic, and adaptive, stood in stark contrast to the centuries-old methods the Council was accustomed to. One particularly difficult question came from the representative of Torvian, a species known for its rigid adherence to protocol. "Your proposals are unusual," the Torvian said. "Why should we trust a human perspective?" "Your species is impulsive. You act before you think." Ethan smiled. "Perhaps that is why we notice solutions others overlook. Humans learn quickly, adapt easily, and are willing to act when necessary. We do not ignore consequences, but we also do not allow fear of tradition to prevent progress. Our perspective is different, yes, but it is effective." The Torvian delegate paused, considering his words. Ethan continued, providing examples from his recent work on Vytheria, mediating trade disputes, suggesting innovative scientific protocols, and resolving diplomatic challenges that had baffled others. Each example was concrete, demonstrating results rather than theory. By the end of the session, the Torvian nodded, a subtle but meaningful sign of respect. Lady Celira observed from the gallery above, her eyes reflecting quiet pride. She had seen potential in Ethan from the beginning, but witnessing it manifest on such a grand scale was different. He was not just proving his worth, he was proving humanity's value to the galaxy. As the council meetings progressed, Ethan's influence grew. He proposed a collaborative research initiative that combined resources and knowledge from multiple star systems to explore newly discovered planets. He suggested a universal communication protocol that would allow rapid information sharing without violating cultural norms. He even introduced methods for conflict resolution that relied on transparency, fairness, and adaptability. Principles humans practiced instinctively, but that many alien species found revolutionary. Some representatives were still skeptical, but they could not deny the results. Agreements that had once taken months to finalize were now completed in days. Trade disputes that had lingered for years were resolved through collaborative planning. The galaxy was beginning to see that humans offered something unique: the ability to act decisively, think creatively, and adapt quickly without losing ethical grounding. Ethan's reputation spread beyond the council. Reports of the human diplomat who solved long-standing problems traveled across star systems, reaching distant colonies and planets where humans were still underestimated. Colonists began to take pride in their species, seeing evidence that humans could stand alongside ancient civilizations and make meaningful contributions. Yet Ethan remained grounded. He understood that influence was not about personal glory, but about demonstrating value. He continued to work quietly, offering solutions, guiding discussions, and mentoring younger delegates. His approach was subtle but effective. Humans did not need to dominate conversations. They needed to show results. One evening, Lady Celira invited him to her private study. The room was filled with holographic maps of star systems, showing trade routes, political alliances, and resource distributions. She gestured for him to observe. "Ethan," she said, "look at this network. Each line represents a connection, an alliance, or a dependency. Most species see it as fixed, unchanging, a web they cannot influence. Humans see patterns, opportunities, and potential. You have already begun to reshape this network through your actions. But now, you must think bigger, not just Vytheria, not just the Council, but the galaxy." Ethan studied the holograms, realizing the scale of the challenge. Coordinating cooperation across dozens of star systems was daunting. But humans were nothing if not resourceful. He began to sketch out strategies, suggesting ways to enhance collaboration, improve communication, and resolve disputes before they escalated. His ideas were grounded in practicality, but infused with creativity, a combination that few alien species had mastered. As he worked late into the night, Lady Celira observed silently. She had given him freedom to act independently, knowing that true leadership required both confidence and insight. Ethan was proving that humans could do more than survive. They could lead, inspire, and innovate on a galactic scale. Over the following weeks, Ethan's strategies began to take effect. Trade efficiency improved, research initiatives accelerated, and diplomatic tensions eased. The galaxy began to recognize that humans were not just capable, but essential to the success of interstellar cooperation. Delegates who had once doubted him now sought his advice, acknowledging the value of a perspective they had previously dismissed. Even Lyra, who had once broken his heart, began to see the transformation. She watched from a distance as Ethan navigated complex negotiations with calm confidence, earning respect from species that had dismissed humans as inexperienced or impulsive. She realized that humans were more than what she had imagined. Their ability to adapt, empathize, and act decisively made them a force that could not be ignored. Ethan, however, remained focused. He did not seek recognition or praise. His goal was to demonstrate humanity's potential through action, not words. Every success reinforced the idea that humans could thrive in a galaxy that had underestimated them for too long. As the twin moons of Etheria rose over the city one evening, Ethan stood on a balcony, looking out at the glowing towers and the stars beyond. He reflected on how far he had come, from a heartbroken human struggling to navigate alien society to a respected diplomat shaping the future of interstellar cooperation. Lady Celira joined him quietly.
"You have done well, Ethan," she said. "But remember, the journey is not over."
The galaxy will continue to test you, and humans will continue to be underestimated. Your challenge is to show them, consistently, that our species brings value in ways they cannot ignore. Ethan nodded. I understand. And I will continue. Humans have always survived, adapted, and thrived. Now, it is time to prove that we can lead as well. The stars above twinkled like distant witnesses to his determination. Ethan felt a surge of purpose. He would continue to show that humans could solve problems, inspire cooperation, and bring innovation to a galaxy that had long overlooked them. And as he stood there, with Lady Celira watching from the shadows, he knew that humans were no longer just participants in the galaxy. They were emerging as a force to be respected, valued, and celebrated. The path ahead would be challenging, but Ethan was ready. Humans had always risen to challenges, and this was no different. For the first time, he realized that his journey was not just about himself, or even Etheria. It was about humanity, and proving to the stars that his species, thought small, impulsive, and inexperienced, could achieve greatness through creativity, courage, and adaptability. And the galaxy, slowly but surely, was beginning to notice. Ethan had spent months navigating the intricate world of Etheria and the Interstellar Council, and now the results of his work were beginning to ripple across the galaxy. Humans, once dismissed as impulsive and short-sighted, were slowly earning recognition for their ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. Every time he proposed a solution or mediated a dispute, he was not just solving a problem, he was reshaping perceptions of his species. The day began like any other, with Lady Celira summoning him to the palace council room. The walls of the chamber glowed softly, reflecting the pale light of the twin moons outside. Ethan felt a familiar excitement and tension. Today was important. He could sense it. Lady Celira smiled as he entered. "You have proven yourself repeatedly," she said quietly, her eyes sparkling with pride. "But today is different. Today you will take humanity's influence to a new level. Are you ready?" Ethan nodded, though his stomach fluttered nervously. "I am." Lady Celira gestured to a large table where delegates from dozens of star systems had already gathered. There were representatives from Zalara, Torvian, Kithara, and other distant systems. The room was filled with quiet murmurs as they glanced at him, many still skeptical of the human presence. Ethan stood, cleared his throat, and addressed the assembly. "Today I want to discuss collaboration, trust, and opportunity. Humans have been underestimated for centuries. We are a young species, yes, but our ability to adapt, to learn quickly, and to innovate has allowed us to survive and thrive across the stars. I hope to demonstrate that these qualities can benefit not only humanity, but every species here. He paused to let his words sink in. Many of the delegates had never seen a human speak with such calm confidence, combining humility with clarity. He began outlining a bold initiative, a collaborative exploration program across newly discovered planets. The plan involved pooling resources, sharing knowledge, and using a rotating leadership model to ensure fairness. It included a network of communication channels that respected each species' cultural customs while promoting transparency. Most importantly, it relied on adaptability. Solutions could be adjusted as situations evolved, a concept many alien species found challenging because their societies valued rigid structure over flexibility. The Zalara representative frowned. "Your plan is unconventional," she said. "It relies on humans leading coordination. How can we trust your species not to act impulsively, to make mistakes that affect us all?" Ethan smiled faintly. "That is a fair concern," he replied. "Humans are indeed quick to act, but our strength is learning from action. We analyze, adapt, and improve. Our perspective is different, yes, but it is also complementary. By combining human adaptability with your careful planning, we can create a system that is both resilient and effective." The room was quiet. Delegates exchanged looks, some skeptical, some intrigued. Ethan continued, explaining how humans had successfully mediated trade disputes on Vitheria, contributed to complex scientific research, and helped coordinate interstellar diplomacy. His examples were practical, concrete, and demonstrated results rather than theory. By the time he finished, the Council had a different view of humans, a species capable of contributing more than anyone had expected. Lady Salira observed from the side, her eyes gleaming with pride. She had watched Ethan grow from a human uncertain of his place into a diplomat capable of influencing multiple star systems. But today he was stepping into a role larger than any individual achievement. He was representing humanity on a galaxy-wide stage. The discussions continued for hours. Ethan skillfully navigated debates, answered questions with clarity, and offered compromises that respected the traditions and needs of every species present. He noticed small changes in the delegates' attitudes. Skepticism turned into curiosity, curiosity into acknowledgement, and acknowledgement into respect. Humans were no longer just tolerated. They were being recognized as valuable contributors. After the meeting, Ethan walked through the Council's observation balcony. He looked out at the vast expanse of space dotted with countless stars, each one a reminder of the galaxy's scale and complexity. He felt a profound sense of purpose. Humans had survived and thrived on Earth, but now they had the opportunity to leave their mark across the stars, and he, a single human among many species, was helping to lead the way. Lady Salira joined him quietly. "Do you see, Ethan?" she said. "This is what happens when humans apply their strengths, adaptability, creativity, and empathy, to challenges others fear or avoid. You have shown them that humans are not to be underestimated." Ethan nodded. "It feels incredible. Not just for me, but for all humans. For once, they are seeing what we can do."
"Yes," she replied, "and this is only the beginning."
"The galaxy will test you further. But you have proven that humans can rise to challenges without relying on strength or force. Your ingenuity, your courage, and your ethical approach are the true measures of power." In the weeks that followed, Ethan's initiatives began to show tangible results. Trade efficiency across multiple star systems improved, disputes were resolved with unprecedented speed, and scientific collaborations flourished. Delegates who had doubted humans were now seeking their advice, acknowledging that human methods offered solutions previously unseen. Even Lyra, who had once rejected him, noticed the change. She had watched from a distance as Ethan navigated complex negotiations and brought disparate species together in cooperative projects. She realized that humans were more than she had ever imagined: adaptable, creative, and capable of leadership on a scale she had never considered. One evening, the council organized a recognition ceremony to honor contributions to interstellar cooperation. Ethan was invited to speak. He approached the podium, his heart steady, and looked out at the assembled delegates. "Humans are often underestimated," he began. "We are not the largest species, nor the longest lived, nor the strongest. But we have a unique gift: the ability to adapt, to learn, to think creatively, and to act with empathy. These qualities have allowed us to survive and thrive in countless environments. Today, I am honored to demonstrate that these same qualities can contribute to peace, cooperation, and progress across the galaxy." He paused as delegates nodded and murmured in agreement. "We do not seek dominance. We do not seek glory. We seek collaboration, understanding, and the chance to show that our species, often dismissed, can rise to meet challenges and offer solutions where others see none. This is not about a single human. It is about humanity as a whole, and the potential we all carry." Applause filled the chamber. For Ethan, it was not personal praise that mattered, but the acknowledgement that humans were finally being recognized as valuable contributors on a galactic scale. The path had been long, filled with skepticism and challenges, but the results were undeniable. Humans could lead, innovate, and inspire without relying on strength, aggression, or intimidation. As the ceremony concluded, Lady Celera approached Ethan. "You have done more than I imagined," she said softly. "You have not only proven your worth, but the worth of humanity. Your species will now be considered a partner in interstellar affairs, not just a curiosity or a liability. You have shown the galaxy what humans can do." Ethan felt a mixture of pride and humility. "I could not have done this alone," he said. "Humans are resilient, yes, but guidance and opportunity made all the difference. And you believed in me when others doubted."
She smiled. "Belief is only the beginning. Action is what changes the galaxy."
"You have acted, Ethan. You have shown humans' true potential. That is the greatest gift anyone can give a species." In the following months, Ethan continued his work, expanding collaboration networks, mentoring representatives from younger species, and guiding initiatives that promoted fairness and innovation. His presence became a symbol of human ingenuity, and his strategies were studied and adopted across multiple star systems. Humans, once underestimated, were now seen as essential contributors to interstellar progress. Ethan often reflected on how far he had come, from heartbreak over Lyra to mentorship under Lady Celera, from uncertainty and doubt to recognition and influence. He realized that the true strength of humans was not in physical power or longevity, but in creativity, adaptability, and empathy. These qualities, often overlooked, had allowed him to thrive in a galaxy that had once dismissed his species. One night he stood on the balcony of Lady Celera's palace, looking out at the stars. The twin moons reflected softly on the crystalline gardens below. He thought of Earth, of his fellow humans, and of the possibilities that lay ahead. The galaxy was vast, and humans had barely begun to explore their potential within it. Lady Celera joined him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Ethan," she said, "you have done more than prove yourself. You have opened the door for humanity. Others will follow, inspired by what you have shown. Humans are not just participants in the galaxy. They are innovators, leaders, and collaborators, and that is a legacy that will endure." Ethan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humans had been underestimated for too long, but now their qualities, adaptability, intelligence, empathy, and creativity, were recognized and respected. They had proven that they could rise to any challenge, solve any problem, and inspire cooperation across species and systems. He looked up at the stars, feeling a quiet determination. The journey was far from over, but humanity had taken its place among the galaxy's respected species. And Ethan knew that wherever humans went next, they would carry with them the lessons learned on Vitheria. That being underestimated could be an advantage, that adaptability and creativity were powerful tools, and that humanity's true strength lay not in might, but in mind, heart, and perseverance. As he gazed into the infinite expanse, Ethan smiled. Humans had arrived, not with force but with ingenuity, courage, and resilience, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again.